Big news. We got word that Senator Elizabeth Warren is out with a new book called Persist, which goes into her loss of the Democratic presidential primary after ranking so high in the polls and then not doing well. She discusses the unique challenges she faced, yes, as a female candidate, but she also, and sort of surprisingly, admits that her loss was in part a failure to explain how she would pay for a universal health care plan, or whether she believed in it at all, if you ask me. More on that in a little bit. We can talk about that. She writes, though, that, quote, in this moment against the president, in this field of candidates, maybe I just wasn't good enough to reassure voters, to bring along the doubters, to embolden the hopeful. And then she admits that that idea is, quote, painful to think that, you know, that could have been it, that she just didn't have what it takes. Also, surprisingly, she does not take shots at Bernie Sanders, even though she had no problem doing so during the primary. Of course, she calls him, quote, fearless and determined. She doesn't discuss any of that drama with whether or not Bernie said that a woman couldn't beat Trump. She also apparently, and this is, I think, really good, devotes a chunk of a chapter to, like, her big screw up identifying her as Native American.
Oh, yeah.
And then early on in the race, maybe even before she announced her run, like, took a DNA test to prove that she was Native American.
I think based on the urging by the Pod Save guys. Which yes.
Oh God, that's what a fucking dumb move.
Yeah, here's the thing. Never listen to anything that podcasters tell you to do, except for Francesca. Everything she does is great.
Except for all of my guests and everyone we have on.
Yeah, well, that's the difference. The guests are, you listen to the guests, never the host.
Never the host. And just like Joe Rogan.
Yeah, honestly. Life would be better if we all just took all like political personalities and put them down a little bit on the pedestal and just be like, they're mostly a platform for people who are doing the work, the boots on the ground, to say things.
Yeah.
So politicians, please do not listen to podcasters.
No, I know, but it is very like Warren, who is fundamentally not cool.
Yeah.
Who you could see being convinced that something was going to be the right thing to do. And in effect, I would say she perhaps listened to too many of her consultants and campaign organizers throughout her run versus maybe what she was good at, which was being far more progressive and tenacious.
Yeah.
And let's be real, like, I think we've talked about a lot, you know, that I feel like she is a little bit the mother of all dragons, or mother of dragons, in that she had a lot of potential and kind of went off the rails at the end there.
Yeah.
When, you know, in terms of the whole Daenerys comparison.
She pulled a bad Game of Thrones at the end.
Which
I think I do put on more so the people surrounding her in the campaign. I think she listened to some really bad advice. And because it's the only thing that could explain this candidate who was ahead in the polls and was also kind of the populist candidate next to Bernie. And that's the thing. Bernie obviously got a boost with the AOC endorsement and whatnot, but that shouldn't have turned her campaign into an attack dog, because she's an attack dog against big banks and big business, corporate. Like that's what people liked about her. And I felt like towards the end it did feel like kind of like, I'm taking you with me a little bit. And
it's so true. And okay, two things, because we could talk a lot about Warren, but two things I just want to say is that I think this book sounds like, and I haven't read it, but it sounds like there is a person in there who learns from their mistakes.
Which is nice.
And that is not something we've seen with a lot of politicians.
True.
And that is even something that I don't know you could see Bernie, who I love, having like a moment with shit. And then I realize, God, my fucking white privilege. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, God, I really fucked up. And so I don't see that. And then the second thing I'll say is I also am sad, though, that her mind doesn't seem as movement focused. Like, it doesn't seem as like, not me, us. It is more like, no, it's me and me, versus like the progressive movement needs this. And we've got to, like, I'm a part of this in like this grassroots thing.
Yeah.
I'm just a vehicle. I'm not like, I want to support the movements. I don't feel like maybe that's just not honest to who she is either.
I felt like she was that way. It felt like she was that way in the beginning of her campaign. And I'm just saying the second half of her campaign, or at least towards the end, made me conflicted about what kind of politician she was.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe there's some answers in the book. I'm glad that she didn't pull a Hillary Clinton in the book, like making it not be a whole book about why she's mad at Bernie or Bernie Bros or whatever. Whereas like Hillary Clinton wrote a book that was just, I think you described it as being called Why I Oughta.
Yeah, Why I Oughta.
It's just like, you don't want, you don't want Elizabeth Warren, writing an entire book out of spite. So it's nice to see that
some humility.
Yeah. And that she didn't spend time just, it's not a dunk fest on Bernie, which is something that I think sells with some of the Democratic Party establishment people.
That's true. Okay, well, I want to bring in our guest, but first I'm just going to read your comments really, really quick. You guys, thank you so much. On Matt's PS5, Keith McKinnon, the Deep State scalped your PlayStation 5.
Yeah.
Not wrong. On JD Vance, Mitchell Evans on YouTube says Vance is malarkey. Very true. On About Daycare on Twitch, Daisy Dragon. Yeah, in 1974, my mom would have loved universal daycare. I was 4 and left at home with my 8-year-old sister at times for mom to work. Damn.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot more stories to that.
Yeah, totally.
Like 8 years old, 4. Whew. Fat guy named Tiny on Twitch. The dandelions are white, are where Hillary hid the emails.
Stupid. Very funny.
You really should write Newsmax copy.
Yeah.
Third Wheel 1984. Thank you so much for the super chat. Hey, Crisis Actor Dandelion is my punk band name.
Nice.
You guys, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Please support this show or tip us at TBR-Live on Venmo, TBR Live on Cash App. And with that, let's bring in our guest. She is an author, political strategist, and organizer who founded the Black Futures Lab to make Black communities and powerful in politics. She's the co-creator of #Black Lives Matter and the Black Lives Matter Global Network, co-founder of Supermajority, a new home for women's activism, and strategy and partnerships director for the National Domestic Workers Alliance. She shares her thoughts on politics and pop culture on her podcast, Lady Don't Take No, and her book, The Purpose of Power, How We Come Together When We Fall Apart, is available now. Please welcome Alicia Garza.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi, it's good to be here with y'all.
So good to have you. Alicia, I just wanted to get your thoughts piggybacking off of our Warren conversation. Like where I mean, maybe just I don't know really what question to ask, but I do know that you did endorse Warren as a primary president or a candidate in the primaries. And I just wanted to know, I know it's a very long conversation, but what do you make of sort of this postmortem and what you think can be learned from her campaign?
Yeah. Well, I hope a part of this postmortem is really not just included in her book, but is included in our movement conversations.
Yeah.
From my perspective, I think things got way too ugly between these two camps when, frankly, what the goal was, right, was to get a left of center candidate as a contender for president of the United States. And, I think people in each camp felt very strongly that their candidate was the candidate. But again, I think we lost sight of the ultimate goal. And frankly, when you put Warren or Sanders up against anybody else in the field, right, you start to realize that you're basically splitting hairs and that there were much bigger fish to fry.
Totally.
So, for me, I'm glad she's putting her story out there. I haven't read it also. I hope it's not like Clinton's memoir because that was rough. And in particular, I still bristle about it because, for us inside of Black Lives Matter, it was a really rough level of engagement. And for those of us who did want to see the first woman ever to become president and still held our noses knowing that, that Hillary Clinton, while she's been a champion for women's issues, most of her life had some real serious shortcomings when it came to what we would want to see from a leader in this country. I think postmortems are necessary in the sense that it gives you a chance to be honest and reflect. And I think Clinton's reflections were they actually made me madder than the moments in which they happened. You know, like I was like, I just can't believe we're talking about this again, and you still don't get it. So
Still don't get it.
You know, with Lauren though, I agree with you, Francesca. Like I think she is somebody who, for better or for worse, she's deeply human. And what I love about her is that she is able to acknowledge her mistakes and to grow as a human and to be human in her reflection. And so I actually look forward to reading her memoir. But I think the bigger question is, does our movement do this kind of postmortem in such a way where we can understand if we have another opportunity like that in our lifetimes, what we need to do with it?
Have you become a patron yet? Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room is where you can directly support this show and help me make it sustainable so that I can do more of what I do best, doing this.